Look, I have reviewed a lot of bad animation over the almost 6 years that I've been doing this. From Disney's multiple failures to a couple other notable failures, but oh lord, I cannot begin to even remotely describe to you how much I fucking hate Phantom Planet. This is actually my first time rewatching it since I was a kid. And keep in mind, I have been a fan of this show for years and I've rewatched it over several times. But this is one of those pieces of shit that I never ever wanted to revisit, ever. But since I've already reviewed all 51 other episodes of this show, I have no choice anymore. So, join me, a very pissed off, very angry, and very frustrated Jackson Small, as we send off our first ever complete series on this entire channel out of all of our reviews. Because despite everything I've covered, from Miraculous to SpongeBob to Drake and Josh, Danny Phantom is the first one we are actually going to entirely finish. And while part of me is grateful for that, because it means that the first show I ever finished is my favorite Nickelodeon show, arguably ever, outside of Drake and Josh, but that's neither here nor there. It's also hard to do because I literally put this off last year because I wasn't ready to say goodbye. And also because I just really did not want to have to put myself through this piece of shit again. But I can't delay it any further. I delayed it last year by making January the big review month instead of February, and I reviewed Drake and Josh. And I still love doing that, and it's going to be just as, if not even harder, to send off that series in 2027. But with Danny Phantom, it's more so because I didn't want to have to talk about the ending. But as stated before, I have run out of fucking excuses. So prepare yourselves. I warned you at the end of Destabilized, and I'm going to warn it again here. If you have anything against very constant swearing, profanity, or unbelievably inhuman amounts of rage, just click off this video now, because it is not for you. And if you're one of the people that actually likes this episode, I respect you as a person and I respect your opinion, but please don't watch this review because it's only going to make you upset, and I don't want to do that. However, for everyone else that agrees with me that this is a colossal pile of absolute space trash, let's press on. Welcome back to Animation Station. Welcome to the end of Phantom February 3 and the final Phantom February in general. Tonight, we are reviewing the series finale of Danny Phantom, known as Phantom Planet. And as I already stated at the beginning of this review, I fucking hate this episode. You want to know how much I hate it? It is in my top 10 worst cartoons of all time at number 7 on that list. I think this one TV movie, this one special, is worse than Tentacalino, worse than Chicken Little, and even worse than the fucking... Oh, what was it called? I can't even remember what it was. But point is, I hate this more than those. And if you know me, that is saying a lot. Now, do I hate it as much as Return to Zombie Island? No. I still hate that thing more. That's in my top 3 worst cartoons of all time. But this is still among the 10 worst. So, buckle the fuck up. Because there's no censorship, no holding back. I'm going to tear this fucking thing a new one, as I've been waiting to do for over 20 years now. So, without further ado, let's begin. So, what is the plot of Phantom Planet? Well, it's actually 2 plots smashed together. Because, as stated before in a ton of other reviews, especially in this particular season, this series, final season, was rushed beyond high hell because Butch, trying to market Ultimate Enemy so hard, ended up failing cataclysmically and lost Nickelodeon so much money they decided it was time to pull the plug. So, because of this, it led to this entire season suffering as a result from sloppy storytelling, rushed poor writing, and underutilization of its cast and characters, a complete flounderization of any world building that has come from the entire first 2 seasons of the show. And if that wasn't bad enough, now focusing more on comedy instead of storytelling. And while my marks on season 3 are higher than most of the fan base, because I still think that this season overall is okay, this piece of shit is so bad that it makes me hate the entire season. And you know what the weird thing is about it? This entire episode was written and directed by Butch himself. No outside help, no extra writers, no nothing. He wrote and directed this entire finale by himself. And it shows that without any help or anyone actually, keeping him reined in, this guy's a fucking hack. Because if he thinks this is good writing, there's a problem. Because this isn't good writing. This is stupid, poor, and lazy. And I'm about to detail in every single reason why. And rip this thing a new one in every fucking capacity humanly possible. So, what is the plot of Phantom Planet? It's 2 plots smashed together. First, you have one half of the story, where Danny defeats Vlad in an outer space battle, prompting Vlad to exact revenge by creating Master's Blasters, which are a team of hip new ghost fighters with 0 personality, whose amazing prowess, because the plot demands it, renders Danny Phantom unnecessary, causing Danny to give up his powers. Not only is this plan stupid, not only is this entire plot stupid, but it makes no sense, because if you've seen Danny's progression throughout this entire show, you'd know that it would take more than just some fucking wannabe hipsters to make him want to stop being a ghost hunter, to make him want to stop being a hero. And what makes this even worse is the way that this plot completely character assassinates Sam, Tucker, and Jazz. Because as soon as Danny gives up his powers, they all turn on him like he's the bad guy, despite Danny having actual decent reasoning for wanting to live a normal life again. But now that he is normal, he's just not allowed to. Because according to his friends, he's nothing without being a hero, and they're nothing to him because he's not a hero. Not only is that fucked up and wrong in more ways than I can even begin to describe to you, but it is also just very poor writing. Like, so cataclysmically poor writing that even now just thinking about it just leaves me baffled. Like, how in the actual ever-living fuck did you ever think that that was actually going to be something that could work as a finale? By assassinating all the characters and having Vlad with one of his worst plots of the entire show. One of his worst evil plans of the entire show, if you even want to call him evil, which he's really not in this episode at all. So, what does Vlad do? Once Danny's out of the picture, he reveals himself as Plasmius, which, since we literally just did that and destabilized with Valerie, it has no fucking impact on the audience whatsoever. Not to mention, everyone's reactions to this make absolutely no goddamn sense. And Vlad does the dumbest thing he could possibly do. Because after Danny gives up his powers, they get the word of the meteor coming back. So the meteor becomes the second half of this plot. If you even want to call it a plot, I call it just two crappy storylines smashed together. And once that is revealed, and once it's revealed that Danny is nowhere to be seen, because he gave up his powers, the Master's Blasters begin to charge for services, and after Vlad publicly exposes himself as Plasmius, he says that he can make the asteroid intangible and go through the Earth, on the condition that he is signed as the ruler of the entire world and given $50 billion. Two things that Vlad never fucking wanted in the entire fucking show through all 51 fucking episodes that fucking happened previously in this entire fucking franchise. And yet now he's just a mustache-twirling bad guy just because? Because, you know, it's all gotta be about the world domination, even though that's not what Vlad wanted. He wanted to get back at Jack. He wants to put Danny in his place. And most importantly, he wants to have Maddie. That is Vlad Plasmius. This version of him is not even him. So after this incredibly stupid thing that makes no fucking sense, he goes up to try to, begin to make this asteroid intangible, only to find out that he can't touch it because, surprise, it's made with a substance that's made in just this episode and has never been fucking once shown in the entire fucking show, called ectoranium. A substance that is never explained, that is never even teased or shown in any other fucking point in this entire fucking show, including this exact same fucking season. And finds out that he can't do anything about it. So what does he do? He gets Jack Fenton to team up with Master's Blasters to go up into space to destroy the asteroid. Only to purposefully give Jack and the Blasters the wrong coordinates beforehand. Meaning that after Vlad finds out that he can't touch this ectoranium asteroid, that for whatever stupid fucking reason has a skull face on it, and it's not even cool, it just looks stupid, then he makes Jack Fenton look like an absolute fool. However, in the one and only good scene in this entire piece of shit, after Jack realizes who Vlad really is, he leaves him in space to die. And his reasoning is the one part of this entire fucking shit show that actually makes some semblance of sense. And it's the one and only good scene in this entire thing that felt like it had any actual thought put into it. But then we have to go through the rest of this, which is somehow an even more larger and even more obnoxious clusterfuck. So, Danny goes into the ghost zone and tells the ghosts about the situation. And we are reminded that the ghost zone and Earth are one and the same and connected to each other. If one dies, they both die. But for some reason, even despite telling them about this revelation, the ghosts decide to attack Danny. And somehow, by attacking him, because Danny got a white streak in his hair after he gave up his powers initially, which destroyed the Phanturd portal, somehow that one white streak in his hair was enough to give him his powers back after they were rejuvenated from being blasted by every ghost in the realm. I'm not against the storyline of Danny losing his powers for a bit. If it weren't for the fucking fact that we've already done this at least 6 times by now. So this just again feels more like haphazard, lazy ass writing. So now that Danny has his powers back, and he's surrounded by every single ghost that he's seen in the entire series, which in itself has almost no impact because they're all stock PNGs. And the biggest thing that makes no sense to me personally, after watching the reviews from a YouTuber called T-Star, is that they actually show ghosts that are the exact same person in the same fucking shot. Like, you have Spectre changing outfits between her outfit from her first appearance and her appearance in Nightmare Hospital. You have the lunch lady and the meat monster being there despite them, being the same fucking person. And the way that all of them just stand statically around Daniel, like there's no animation to them at all. They just fucking stand there. And then Danny goes back to the human world after, assembling all these ghosts. And he tells them that instead of making the asteroid intangible, they're going to make the Earth intangible. Which, even by this show's logic, makes no fucking sense and shouldn't even be remotely possible. But hey, I guess we gotta end this shit show somehow, right? So they tie a bunch of tubes around the fucking Earth, which is apparently supposed to help make the whole thing intangible, which makes no goddamn sense. And before you say, oh, it's cartoon logic, don't think about it too hard. You still have to follow the rules of the world that you've built for that to actually be something that's plausible. This doesn't fucking do that, if you can't already tell. So, the ghosts all assemble, they use their powers in the North or South Pole, who fucking cares, in one of the fucking poles, and somehow makes the whole Earth intangible, then everything is saved, and then Danny reveals himself to the world, pretty much making the entire wiping everyone's memory thing from Reality Trip completely fucking pointless. And Danny kisses Sam, and the two officially become a couple while Valerie stands there blindly cheering along with everybody else, despite the fact that she would not fucking act like that. And then you have the one final giant colossal kick in the fucking nuts that is Tucker becoming mayor. And thank God that this was retconned immediately in the next piece of material made for Danny Phantom that we'll talk about in a minute. Because if this stayed the ending, yeah, it still make no sense. Okay, let's finish off with continuity and some fucking trivia, I guess. I honestly don't know anymore. Like, even just talking about this piece of shit is exhausting as fuck. In the episode Bitter Reunions, Danny foreshadowed Vlad's ultimate fate of being miserable and alone for the rest of his life. Yeah, let's just ignore the one stinger ending where he gets obliterated by the meteor. Because even, again, that source material we're gonna talk about later that continues this story after the show's ending completely retcons this part, so just pretend that little bit didn't even happen. This episode establishes ectoranium as a key component in ghost weaponry, even though it's never fucking once built up to or shown in the entire fucking series, but whatever. This episode's reminiscent of Million Dollar Ghost and Rainstorm as it further plays on Vlad's true ambitions of world domination, also following on his offer to rule with Danny in Bitter Reunions. That's a fucking lie, because it's never to this extent in the entire show. And he never wanted it to this extent in the entire fucking show. Danny gives Sam the West class ring that Jack gave him to give to her in Flirting with Disaster. Whatever. The episode starts out with Vlad holding the Infomap, first seen in Infinite Realms, and then it's never seen again. Also in Infinite Realms, in which Vlad was banished from every realm he tries to take over, similar to how this episode he's exiled from Earth after attempting to gain global power. Hey, guess what? This plot also goes absolutely fucking nowhere. In Live and Large, it is established that the Ghost Zone and the Earthly Plane are linked. If one's destroyed, so is the other. I mean, I thought we established this before that trash episode, but whatever. This episode also rounds out Danny's character as it plays on how selfish he's been before at least half of the show and helps him learn to do good for the sake. That is a goddamn lie. That's from bad, lazy shit writing that forgot his character. Moral: being good isn't about what you can do, it's about what you should do. There was no moral to be found here, just a whole clusterfuck of bad ideas and terrible writing. A running gag throughout the episode is Danny losing his jumpsuit after Master's Blasters captures a ghost, and it also makes him appear in his underwear. Because Butch apparently forgot that Danny can, fucking turn invisible, making that entire thing pointless. This is the only episode with no design in or tagline on the title card. It's simply words out Phantom Planet with an outer space background. Yeah, in other words, the worst and shittiest title card in this entire show. Which makes sense, because this is the worst and shittiest episode of the entire show. This is the only episode without a cold opening scene. Yahoo. This episode has unknown reasons for not being shown in Russia. I consider that lucky that they weren't subjected to this piece of shit in its original syndication. This is the first and only time Jazz has ever entered the Ghost Zone with Team Phantom. Another detail that goes nowhere. This is the only hour-long special that's not from Season 2. Because the Season 2 ones were all easily better than this. This is the only season finale where Freak Show is not the main antagonist. And it's because the show itself forgot about him. Aside from that one scene with all the PNG ghosts, which, by the way, Freak Show's not a fucking ghost. He was a ghost very temporarily in Reality Trip, but then Danny turned him back to human by the end to give him back to the Men in White. So him appearing as a ghost here, once again, I'm gonna say it again, makes no fucking sense. You might as well call this Makes No Fucking Sense the episode. Because this entire thing makes no fucking sense. Final thoughts. Because, God damn it, there's still so much shit to talk about. I have been enjoying this mode for a very long time. I love this show, and it's still my favorite Nicktoon of all time, but even as a kid, I absolutely hated this finale with every fiber of my soul. And now watching it again for the second and last time, hopefully, it somehow has gotten even worse as an adult. This is not only by far the worst episode in the entirety of Danny Phantom, Not only one of the worst series finales that I've ever seen in my life, not only one of the worst pieces of animation I've ever seen in my life, but honestly one of my personal least favorite things that I've ever watched. And I wish that I could go back to forgetting it even fucking existed. The story is an utter mess of bad ideas and plot holes so big that the creators would eclipse the fucking moon. Worst one being that Danny was getting humiliated and never turns invisible. You know, despite showing that he could fucking do so in every fucking episode of the fucking show that fucking happened fucking previously before this fucking piece of fucking shit. Whatever. All the characters get a character assassinated and devolved into insufferable douchebags. Especially Sam, who's at the worst that she's ever been, and revealing she only liked Danny because of his powers. Shallow fucking bitch. Danny is treated as the bad guy the entire special, despite having decent reasons for wanting to have a normal life again. Vlad's final plan sucks big time, especially in comparison to his previous ones from this exact same fucking season. The pacing's horrendous as it wastes so much time on stupid shit and leaves almost nothing for the actual final conflict. The voice acting, despite being the same cast it's always been, sounds off and strangely cynical due to none of the lines making any sense for any of the characters to say. Now, I get they were probably frustrated about this being the last one, and they didn't want to say goodbye to the characters and felt like they were getting screwed. I get that. But it still feels out of place. And it's weird because even in most of the other bad episodes of this show, the very few that there are, I could still at least compliment the great voice acting. I can't even do that here because since the writing is so fucking abysmal, they're given nothing to work with. So from start to finish, they just sound off. Sorry, I'm getting way too angry. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not getting too angry because this fucking piece of shit deserves it. The plot itself is utter garbage that just makes everything up as it goes along and introduces things that were never shown or built up to in the entire series for no reason than needing a grander scale, and even in that grander scale, it fucking falls on its goddamn face. All the ghosts of the show are here as nothing but plot devices for a final act that lasts less than 10 minutes in an hour-long TV movie. The entire actual final conflict of this entire fucking show lasts less than 10 fucking minutes. That is a special kind of pathetic. Danny getting his powers back is so forced and hurts and makes no sense despite the fan theories, and the entire ending makes no sense. Like, nothing about the ending makes sense. Not even by this show's small little bits of logic and actual rules of world building. It makes no goddamn sense. Yes, as I've stated before, it's not entirely the fault of the people making the series, as the corporate morons at Nick refused to give them one last season after Butch made them go over budget, and forced them to rush the series to its end. But could they really not have just overlooked this mess before beginning that final production? Spot all the flaws, see all the storylines that needed conclusions, and actually make it feel like a genuine finale that can satisfy the fans and give each character a satisfying send-off? I'm mainly talking about Butch here, since he's the biggest culprit, because he's the one that wrote this fucking trash. Instead, we got this muddled, contrived, incoherent, and endlessly frustrating mess that shows none of the show's strengths, and instead magnified while so many people hate this final season. Because, by terms of story continuity, it is a massive fucking trash pile. Sure, as a season itself, it's fine. I don't hate it, and there are good things in it. But in terms of actually being the final act of a story, it completely fucking fails. Because most of this season was just one-off bad guy of the week episodes that had little to nothing to do with fucking anything. And I will never forgive Nick for treating it so poorly when it's arguably just as, if not even more entertaining as the best of SpongeBob, Last Airbender, Jimmy Neutron, and Fairly OddParents had to offer. Yes, I had many issues with Destabilize, but I'll gladly accept that as a finale of the series if it means I never have to remember this fucking junk pile ever exists again. Yes, I have my problems with Destabilized, and I still do, but at least that episode was fine. It was okay, it was watchable. I can't even call this watchable. Because it's so fucking bad that it goes beyond just the worst of this show. It goes into the worst of all of animation. And you cannot blame anyone else besides the corporates at Nick and Butch himself for this. Look, Butch wanting to push the marketing of Ultimate Enemy to incredible heights that this show has never done before. I get it, especially knowing that Ultimate Enemy is the best thing to ever come out of this show. But by going over budget, by having to pay all these royalties to all these other companies, specifically THQ, Ultron, and Burger King, because Burger King made a toy line to promote that special. By going over budget for all of that, it doomed his own show. Not to mention, because of that, not only did it mean that this final season had to be rushed to high hell, and not only did it mean that the show's quality itself had to suffer because of it, but the show lost one of its best and most essential writers because of this entire shit show. Leaving the show aimless for its final season. Which is why so many people in the Danny Phantom community fucking hate it just as much as they hate Season 7 of SpongeBob. And while I don't think this season is that bad on just an overall level, on a storytelling level, yeah, it's down there. It is down there with Season 7 of SpongeBob. Oh, and before you ask, I actually hate this more than Yours, Mine, and Mine, A Pal for Gary, and One Course Meal. Yeah, that's how much I fucking hate this thing, and all the damage it did to Danny Phantom's reputation. Danny Phantom is still an incredible series. But this shit, terrible, deplorable, horribly made, atrociously written, badly created excuse of a finale can burn eternally in the core of the sun, and then even further down into the deepest, darkest pits of fucking hell. And that's it. That is all I have to say about Phantom Planet. That's all I have to say about this thing that took this great show and ended it on such a depressingly shitty note. And with all of that, my final verdict for Phantom Planet, the series finale of my favorite Nicktoon of all time, is a 0. 0 out of 10. A 0. It is the 7th worst cartoon that I have ever subjected myself to in my entire life. It can forever burn in the pits of hell, and I'm going to go back to forgetting it even exists as soon as I'm done this review. Fuck this episode, and fuck what it did to this show. But, with that being said, however, there is a silver lining. as all these years later, the franchise has gotten 2 brand new official comics by Gabriella Epstein. Those being A Glitch in Time, that picks up exactly where this disastrous finale left off, fixes a ton of its problems, and continues the story faithfully, and its sequel, Fair Game, which adds some more development for Danielle and Valerie, as well as another appearance by Wolf, and some really nice slice-of-life moments that really help forward the characters even further. Continuing the story and actually cleaning up a lot of the mistakes the finale made, refining the lore into something more cohesive, and addressing all the important storylines the finale itself just outright abandoned. Not to mention that Danny and his friends are still popular today, as he's making regular appearances in the Nickelodeon crossover games, still getting lots of fan art, has one of the most dedicated, diehard fan communities of any cult animated series ever. And, even far beyond just being a Nickelodeon show. The voice actors still have fond memories and share stories of working on it. Heck, Colleen O'Shaughnessy, when I met her at Sci-Fi Valicon, she told me about how much she loved voicing Jazz, and that she's still friends with all her fellow cast members. Especially Rob Paulson and David Kaufman, who she's still friends with to this very day, and very good friends with at that. And from what I've seen from stories and other interviews I've seen online, everyone that worked on this show loved working on this show. Which just makes it all the more painful the way that it all ended. It's still getting discussed on the internet by everyone who grew up with it, as well as some newcomers who are just now introducing themselves to it. It's still getting cosplays to a quantity that can rival even Has-Been Hotel. Yes, I'm not shitting you. It's still getting a ton of cosplays even today, from diehard fans. And like the best of cartoons, it's getting passed down by those kids that watched it who've now grown up into adults, and passing it down to their children for them to experience that same thrill that they did 22 years ago when they were kids. I am no exception to that. I still adore the show, the world, the characters, the fan base. Seriously, one of the nicest and most lovely fan bases I've seen in animation. And I have nothing but respect for everyone who brought it to life. Except for you, Butch. You're literally the one that screwed the entire pooch, so fuck you. I'm talking about Steve, David, Rob, Colleen, everyone else that worked on the show that's not you. Everyone else with actual talent that put their work into this show. Nothing but respect for you all. I just wish it could have been treated better. However, thanks to the comic books and getting more merch nowadays than he ever did back in the show's actual syndication, which we're going to talk about a bit, the future has honestly never been brighter for this quirky but lovable half-ghost crime fighter. Okay, so that's pretty much all the review stuff about Danny Phantom all done and dealt with. So, with all of that said, I'd like to try to make this a little bit more interesting by also giving you guys a bit of a guide on Danny Phantom, specifically from the merchandise side of things, because back when this show first came out, it was getting little to no merchandise at all. It got 2 Game Boy Advance games, 2 toy lines at Burger King, no dedicated toy lines of its own from any companies whatsoever, and only 3 physical media releases back then. Oh, and also only 1 or 2 books. It was not getting very much merch back then, which is one of the reasons why Nickelodeon pulled the plug. So, I thought we'd take a moment and go over that history in a bit of detail. Because since I'm done talking about the episode now, and I never want to talk about that piece of shit again, instead, I'm going to try to make this final bit for my entire overall thoughts on Danny Phantom, into a helpful guide of sorts. So, the first thing that we got Danny Phantom related in terms of physical media was the season sets, and they started with season 1, which were released on September 16th of 2008. Yeah, people had to wait over a year until the show after it ended to actually get DVD releases of it. So, season 1 came out in September 16th of 2008. And then that same day, on September 16th of 2008 as well, but this one's exclusively just to Amazon, came the season 2 DVD. And then finally, over a year later, in June 9th of 2009, a whole 2 to 3 years after the show's finale, the season 3 DVD came out. All these original DVDs were fine for what they were in terms of quality, but that was pretty much all you had for this show. You had only these 3 options. These were all made by Shout Factory. So this was one of those Nickelodeon shows that was not made in-house by Paramount Home Video or anything like that. This was made by Shout Factory. These original releases were made by Shout Factory. And obviously by now, these original DVD releases of the show have been discontinued. However, the show did get retail releases, but it wasn't until 2 years later in 2011. So, on September 13th of 2011, we got the Season 1 DVD again. It was re-released, it had new art, and it was slightly higher quality in terms of its overall presentation. And then, for some reason, Season 2 got split into 2 parts, which is weird. I'm gonna admit that right now. It's weird that they split Season 2 into 2. I don't know, maybe it was a production issue? I don't really know. It doesn't say. And Part 1 came out on April 3rd of 2012 and August 28th of 2012 for Season 2, Part 2. Then we had a really weird release in July of 2013 with Danny Phantom Ghost Hunter, which only had 5 episodes, those being Mystery Meat, One of a Kind Parental Bonding, Attack of the Killer Garage Sale, and Splitting Images. All episodes from Season 1. But that's not where the weirdness ends. In fact, it got even weirder, because before you actually could get Season 3 by itself, like just by itself to complete your collection if you were getting all these DVDs individually, that's when Shout Factory released their Ultimate Collection. And it's the definitive way that most people get this show on physical media, because it literally has everything, and it's in the correct order and not in the crappy order of its actual syndication that Nickelodeon followed. So, on January 28th of 2014, multiple months before the final season itself got its own DVD re-release, came this gem right here. Danny Phantom, the complete series. This was the technically first release of Season 3 of the show, and it compiles all 52 episodes and all the previous parts and DVDs and stuff like that into one giant 9-disc set. It includes all of the episodes in the highest quality that they can be put in, despite still being 4:3 aspect ratio. And it's pretty much the only way to get this show in physical media nowadays, because even these re-released DVDs from Shout Factory are being discontinued, if they haven't been discontinued already. So, yep, I literally just got this today. And it's been a bucket list item of mine for a while now, because since this is my favorite Nicktoon, I wanted to get the best and most complete version of it, so I could watch it whenever I wanted without having to rely on you know, Paramount Plus and all their bullshit. So, yep. I am now a proud owner of one of these, and now I can rewatch the show whenever I want, without having to pay any extra premiums or anything like that, because physical media is king. So, that came out on January 28th of 2014. Yeah, already over 10 years ago. But it wasn't until October 14th of 2014 when they actually did the full re-release of the last season by itself. So from January 28th all the way up to October 13th, pretty much the entirety of 2014, the only way to get the re-release of Season 3 was to get the complete series set. Which is weird because usually Shout Factory is really good at handling these kind of things. Matter of fact, they've been put in charge of a bunch of complete series sets, especially nowadays, through stuff like Rocko's Modern Life, Hey Arnold, Power Rangers, stuff like that. So, I don't know if this was because it was one of their first ever complete series releases, but yeah, it's a little weird. But that doesn't mean that these were the only Danny Phantom episodes to ever be put on DVD, because there was also a couple of compilation DVDs that came out around this time, and each of them featured one episode of the series, and those were the Nitpicks series, a collection of volumes, 6 of them in particular, overall in total, that each contained one episode of a particular show in a set altogether. Now, these are from 2005 all the way to 2007. So, obviously, these have by now also been discontinued, along with the original Shout Factory releases of all 3 seasons of the original show. So, let's go over them quickly and briefly, shall we? So, first you had Nick Picks Volume 1, which was released on May 24th of 2005, and it had the episode Bitter Reunions from Season 1. Then, in October 18th of 2005, later that same year, you had Nitpicks Volume 2, and that episode included in that collection was Splitting Images. Another one from Season 1, if you can't already tell. Then, we had Nick Picks Volume 3 on February 7th of 2006, and this included Fright Night. Another Season 1 episode. Then, we had Nitpicks Volume 4 on June 6th of 2006, with Teacher of the Year included. Then you had Nitpicks Holiday, which was released on September 26th of 2006, and this, of course, included The Fright Before Christmas. And then the final Nitpicks Volume 5, came out on March 13th of 2007, and it had the episode Fanning the Flames. Another Season 1 episode. So for some reason, in almost all these Nick Picks DVDs, they only included Danny Phantom episodes from Season 1, with maybe 1 or 2 of them from Season 2. But none of them from Season 3, despite the fact that these were mostly coming out after the show, and, well, okay, they were coming out as the show was still technically in syndication, but specifically, Nick Picks Volume 5 for some reason picked Fanning the Flames instead of another episode like Girls' Night Out or Infinite Realms or anything like that, which is a really weird choice. But it is still pretty cool that Danny Phantom did get shouted out in all of these Nick Picks DVDs. But if that wasn't already enough of a confusing mess, then you have the international releases of Danny Phantom, and he's only had 3 of them of his own. There was The Ultimate Enemy, which was unknown, but it was released exclusively in Mexico. It featured The Ultimate Enemy, obviously, Teacher of the Year, Micromanagement, and Parental Bonding. A very strange compilation of episodes. Then, also an unknown release date, also released exclusively in Mexico, was Pirate Radio, or if you speak Spanish, Navío Fantasma Pirata. which featured Pirate Radio, Rainstorm, and the $1 Million Ghost. One less episode than the previous release. And then finally, this one actually does have a release date of October 16th, 2009, another one exclusively in Mexico, and the last one to be exclusively released in Mexico was the Fright Night DVD. This came with Fright Night, obviously, Torrent of Terror, Frightmare, and 13. So this was the only DVD that was not like a complete series set or a Season 3 set that included Season 3 episodes of the show. You confused yet? Oh, don't worry, it gets even more confusing. And in 2008, there was Green to Go. This was a DVD that was exclusively packaged with copies of the SpongeBob Pests of the West DVD in 2008. And this DVD featured Urban Jungle, along with one Avatar episode and an episode of Chalk Zone, which I think is one of the only episodes of Chalk Zone to actually be released on physical media, which is strange. And then, many, many years later, in 2015, we had not one, but two special holiday-themed DVD releases of Nickelodeon cartoons. Compilation DVDs. These were released exclusively in New Zealand and Australia. There was A Very Nickelodeon Christmas, which obviously included The Fright Before Christmas, and classic Nickelodeon Halloween specials, which included Fright Night, obviously. It was the obvious Halloween episode, even though I would argue that Nightmare Hospital should be the Halloween episode, but I digress. And then, to finally make things even more confusing, you had the Out of the Vault / Keeping It Nick collection, another compilation of various Nickelodeon DVD releases that compiled a bunch of episodes of other shows together. And just like Nick Picks before it, it was all very random. And strangely enough, the first one of this series to include Danny Phantom wasn't until April 20th of 2018 with Out of the Vault Rewind, which I was lucky enough to find at a Goodwill, and I'm actually a proud owner of. And this one actually includes two really good episodes of Danny Phantom, those being My Brother's Keeper and Fanning the Flames, two of the best episodes from Season 1. Then, on October 2nd of 2018, in the Keeping It Nick compilation DVD, you had Mystery Meat and Parental Bonding, more episodes from Season 1. And then the final release of this entire series was Out of the Vault Forever Favorites on October of 2020. Yeah, this came out the year COVID hit. And it featured Memory Blank and Doctor's Disorders, two episodes from Season 2. So, just to summarize, from the compilation DVDs, less than half of them included episodes from Season 2, only one of them being an exclusive episode, an exclusive DVD that was only released in Mexico, featured only 2 episodes of Season 3. Then you had a bonus disc that was packaged with another copy of another Nickelodeon thing that also included a Season 3 episode. And then you had a bunch of releases that compiled along with The Fright Before Christmas. And then, finally, you had Shout Factory releasing these things that added even more Season 1 episodes. So Season 1 was very much represented in every single one of these, while the other 2 seasons were barely existent. It's weird how that works. So, yeah, it's a complicated history, but I actually found it quite fascinating when I was doing all the research. So, to conclude all of this, obviously you want to get the complete series DVD release. It only goes for about $20 nowadays. It's dirt cheap by today's standards. It's easy to get, and it has all 56 episodes compiled into one collection. And the DVD doesn't say whether or not it has bonus features, but I'm pretty sure it has at least a couple bumpers or something. So, yeah, definitely get this release if you want the complete series of Danny Phantom, because the rest are either out of print, completely discontinued, or only available in other countries, which means they're only available in other languages. So, there you go. That's the physical media ramble. Then moving on from that was books, and Danny Phantom did not get a lot of these back then, which is weird because this is the same era that SpongeBob was getting these regularly, like every other month. I mean, I collected a grand majority of them myself, so I know that for a fact. But in terms of actual books, we've only had the Nick Stone book called Stage Fright, which now goes for insane prices on eBay, a style guide, one appearance in the Nickelodeon magazine, which was the same issue that also included sneak peeks at Drake and Josh, and the comic continuation of the online short Fairly Odd Phantom. It's just as stupid as that short was in terms of a story, but it's some cool little nostalgia bait. But yeah, it wasn't until 2023 when we started getting the Gabriella Epstein comics that we actually got actual book releases of Danny Phantom. Which, again, is so weird because, like, Danny Phantom, arguably one of Nickelodeon's most popular cartoons ever next to SpongeBob, and it got barely any releases during its actual original syndication. It wasn't until nowadays that it's actually getting the attention that it should have gotten way back when. So, yeah, they don't have a lot of books, but I highly recommend the Gabriella Epstein comics. They are great reads. Then moving on from that, we have the matter of toys. Now, back in the day, Danny Phantom only got toy lines via the Burger King team-ups for Ultimate Enemy and Urban Jungle, respectively. Only 2 whole toy lines. And that was it. No other company took them on, no other company was making merch of them, nothing. So, it wasn't until around the early 2010s when Jazzwares was making Nicktoons figures, and they decided to make one of Danny Phantom. And this is actually his first ever action figure. And this figure, despite not being great in terms of articulation, goes for insane prices, just like everything else Danny Phantom related, because for some reason, whenever there's Danny Phantom merch, because it wasn't so common back then, it goes for insane prices every time there's a new one, with a couple of exceptions. And then, of course, you have the biggest current big toy, if you want to call it that, releases of Danny Phantom nowadays, which come in the form of none other than Funko Pops. Starting with this first one of Danny Phantom that was released as a New York Comic Con convention exclusive in 2015? When was this? In 2020. And that pop, despite not being like a glow-in-the-dark or anything like that, and being like the first ever Funko Pop of Danny Phantom, now goes for a minimum of $300. The prices that this thing goes for nowadays is ridiculous. But I also kind of get it. They also made a little Five Below exclusive vinyl minifigure, which is nice. But then we got a couple other ones. We got a Freddy Funko as Danny Phantom, because of course we did. There's gotta be a Freddy Funko of everything, because that's the mascot of the company. And then, in the most annoying way possible, we got 2 more of them. And these are one-of-ones. These are the only versions of these characters available in pop form. And Funko decided to lock them behind their stupid fucking NFT system. And if you know anything about NFTs and how shit they are, that is a huge problem. And just because apparently they hate me specifically, they released in this line Ember and Vlad. These two, right here, which are exclusive to NFTs, and that the only way you could actually get them was by buying them as a digital collectible, which entered you into a raffle. And then you'd have to wait and see by some luck if that raffle would actually net you these pops, or if you did it all for nothing and wasted your money. These pops go for a minimum of $300 separately, and at least $800 when they're put together. And then, of course, you have the extra, extra, extra rare prototype Danny Phantom Funko Pop. It's a literal unpainted prototype of the Danny Phantom Pop that is extremely rare and also goes for insane prices on eBay. So, yeah, if you want to get Danny Phantom Pops for your collection, you better fork out that cash because they overcharge the ever-living hell out of them. However, I will say that there is one silver lining to this story, and that is with the newest release of this line. That being Sam, who was released as a 2025 Summer Convention exclusive. And she's currently on the Funko Shop right now, and she's actually only available for $8. And the cool thing about this particular Sam Pop is that this version of Sam is in the dress from Parental Bonding. You know, that thing she said she wasn't going to wear and then she ended up using it when she was going to the dance with Tucker? Yeah, that's the pop you get here. And it's a really nice pop. I'm glad that Sam does have a pop of her own. And I'm also glad that this is the only Danny Phantom Pop that is not egregiously overpriced on any other sites. So, yeah, there is a bit of a happy ending to that story, as there is at least one pop that you can get that won't break your wallet because it is still relatively new because it came out in the summer of last year. So, she's still in the Funko Shop right now. If you are interested, I will put a buy link in the description below if you would like to purchase her. All I'll say is act quick though, because I'm pretty sure by the summer of this year she's probably going to skyrocket in price like all these other pops have. Not to the point of being as bad as Ember and Vlad, but still probably skyrocket pretty high up there. But unfortunately, Danny Phantom doesn't really have his own like toy line or anything like that, like the luxuries that most other franchises have nowadays. Which is a bummer, because I would like to see a company like NECA or Jazzwares or someone else take like an entire line of this show and put it into action figure form. With today's engineering and today's technology, you can make some pretty damn cool stuff with it. And then finally, there's the Danny Phantom game history. And Danny has only 2 actual games to his name, the rest being Flash games that are long past dead by now. But he does make regular appearances in the Nickelodeon crossover games. Now, that doesn't mean he appears in every single one. Like, for example, Nickelodeon Party Blast. That one he does not feature in because that one came out before the show began, so he wasn't in existence yet. But there are a couple games that he has been in that are notable. So let's briefly go over some of them. Obviously, you have the Nicktoons Unite series, which was Nicktoons Unite, Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island, Nicktoons Attack of the Toybots, and SpongeBob featuring Nicktoons and Globs of Doom. All those games. And then he was also in Nicktoons MLB as a playable character. He was in the Nicktoons Super Stuff Minigame Mania collections. He was in the lost media of arcades known as Nicktoons Nitro. And then most recently, he's in the Super Brawl games that you can download on your phone, including Super Brawl Universe that's available for Android. He's a skin in Smite alongside Rocco and Invader Zim. I talked about Urban Jungle Rumble when I did my Urban Jungle review. And then, of course, we have the recent Nickelodeon games, those being the Nickelodeon Kart Racers series, Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2 and 3 Slime Speedway, to be specific. He wasn't in the first game, because the first game had a very limited roster. And then, of course, the All-Star Brawl series, where he is a playable character. And in the second game, Vlad Plasmius was the main villain, as well as adding in Ember McLean as a playable character. And another interesting fact about All-Star Brawl 2 is that it was the last voice appearance of Martin Mull as Vlad Plasmius before he sadly passed away very shortly after. Rest in peace, man. Thank you for giving us one last incredible gift. And then, of course, there is the most recent addition to the main Nicktoons series, that being Nicktoons and the Dice of Destiny, where Danny Phantom is the assassin class in that game, in a really cool ninja-like suit. And that game's awesome. If you haven't played Dice of Destiny yet, you need to. It's a great game. So, yeah. Danny Phantom is arguably more popular than he's ever been. Not to mention, you also have things like the Ink Tank's 10 years later Ben 10 crossover fanfic series, which is a really cool and fascinating series, even if it does have some of its own problems. I'll leave a link to that somewhere as well, because I would love for you guys to check that out and give your thoughts. And, of course, most recently, as you saw in one of my live streams from last year, Danny Phantom was added into Fortnite, as well as Sam. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't get the entire Danny Phantom bundle. I got just Danny himself, but let me tell you, going Ghost in that game with the emote, that is a whole new level of satisfaction I didn't know that I needed. And yes, I still main the ever-living shit out of Danny, almost as much as I main Scooby, Jason, and Rumi from K-Pop Demon Hunters. That's how much the character means to me. And then, as for other merchandise for Danny Phantom, well, he is definitely getting a lot more of it now than he ever did before. So, to close us off, I think we'll take one last brief little glimpse through Amazon here. And I'll put some pictures up of the ones that I think are the most interesting. Now, obviously, you have a lot of t-shirts and stuff like that that Danny did not get when he was originally airing on Nickelodeon. There's also pants, there's long-sleeve shirts, obviously there's cosplay costumes if you want to cosplay as Danny. There's sweatshirts, there's a pin from Zen Monkey Studios that was released for this show's 10th anniversary. There's boxer briefs, there's tank tops. There is a tote bag. There is tote bags. I almost forgot that one. So, Danny definitely has far more merch now than he ever did when he was in original syndication. But with all that said, that's pretty much all I can say about Danny Phantom. And that concludes this entire review series that I started when I first started this channel. It's crazy that it took this long, but after a whopping 5 years, we're finally closing this chapter. Now, this doesn't mean I'm not talking about Danny Phantom ever again. I know that I'm definitely going to be talking about him again soon, because I plan to find a way to hunt down and get those Funko Pops to show in some kind of showcase video or review or something. I'm totally going to be doing an unboxing video on this beast right here. I'm still going to be producing merchandise, and of course, I may or may not be making top 10 best and worst episode lists. But it just won't be under the Phantom February moniker, because this is mainly just for the theme month of Danny and to talk about specifically the show. And I think I've said everything I can say about the show. So, all I guess I can say now is thank goodness that Phantom Planet is no longer the end of this entire franchise. Because now we have these brilliant, incredible, well-made, and very entertaining comic books that continue the story, fix all the mistakes of that finale, and honestly all of Season 3 in general. And honestly has made the series even more popular than it's ever been. Because this and A Fair Game have gotten unanimous praise from Danny Phantom fans, and I have no doubt that we're going to be getting more very soon. Fair Game literally just came out at the end of last year, so there's no doubt we're probably going to get more of these, and I'm excited to see where the story goes next. So, yeah, the show may have been over for over 20 years now, but the point is, his future's never looked brighter. He's getting more attention, he's getting more merch, and since he's now considered a legacy character, Nickelodeon is putting more support behind him and his franchise more than they ever did when he was first running on the network. It's still highly praised today. It's still one of the most popular shows to ever come out of Nickelodeon, next to, you know, a certain Little Yellow Sponge. And the future's honestly just never been brighter, and it couldn't make me happier. As someone who grew up with this series but never had the luxury of the merchandise and options that we have now. So, I know that this is an 18+ video, and I know that I gave Phantom Planet itself a very well-deserved negative thrashing, but I want to end this entire marathon in my coverage of this show with a simple thank you. To David Kaufman, to Colleen O'Shaughnessy, to Steve, to everyone else involved in this show, excluding Butch, who is literally the reason it fell off a cliff. The rest of you put in so much time, work, and effort, and that charm and all that effort and passion still continues to resonate with many people today. Yes, the show has its problems, as we've detailed throughout all of these theme months. But without all your hard work, we wouldn't have this incredible franchise to even discuss. So, thank you to all of you who helped bring this show to life. And your hard work and your contributions shall never be forgotten. And of course, finally, thank you for watching. It's been a blast talking about Danny Phantom for the past 5 years, and it is sad that we're not going to have like big theme months for this show anymore, but I'm just grateful that I have a platform where I can share my love and other emotions for my favorite things to the rest of the world. It means everything to me to have a platform to just sit down and talk about things that I either love, hate, or I'm somewhere in between. And thank you guys for over 1,400 subscribers. That it blows my mind how fast this channel continues to grow, and I guess there's only one way to send this all off. So, until we meet again, thank you all so much for watching, and one last time, I'm going ghost!
I'm excited for what comes up ahead.